What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live, brought to you by Sticks.com. I am Emma Lingen. I am joined tonight by Andrew McInnes. We are coming at you live to talk about round one, game four in the Battle of Florida, Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers. Of course, the Panthers took this one pretty handily. Final score of 4-2. They now lead the series 3-1. We are going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the Dallas Stars and Colorado Avalanche. Game five, puck just dropped, and Dallas is already up 1-0, courtesy of Wyatt Johnston, 9 seconds into the game. So we're going to keep you updated on that one as well as we go along here. But wherever you're watching us from, YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, any or all of the hockey news platforms that we are live on right now, we encourage you to send us your questions, your comments, your concerns, your rants about the Battle of Florida. This is certainly a game that had plenty to rant about, I think, and we're going to get into that here soon. But before we do want to remind you, we are brought to you by Sticks.com. Why break the bank on sticks when you can get pro level composite sticks without this price tag at Sticks.com? That's Stix.com. Head there now and gear up without the markup. Okay, Andrew. I don't even know where to start this one with this one. We had some fireworks in this one tonight.
When we thought about the Battle of Alberta and the Battle of Ontario, we thought both those were going to be just bloodbaths, but especially the Battle of the Sunshine State. And, a lot of times, no matter what sport it is, if you're not getting the calls that you'd like, the best way to pay a team back is to go reward yourself with goals. And I've never seen a coach celebrate as much as John Cooper did when his team scored those back-to-back goals. Really, I mean, the raw emotion. Usually he's a pretty even-keel guy. He makes some remarks and kind of some good quotes to the media, but usually on the bench, he stays pretty calm. He seemed very pumped up. But then after that, it was all Florida. And one thing about this Florida team, they just don't go away. I mean, you're going to give them a penalty. You're going to get Ekblad, that big hit, and you're going to give Mikola that 5-minute major. Doesn't matter to this Florida Panthers team. They're relentless. They have all kinds of guys that will kill you. And I'm sure we will talk about that Ekblad play, but how funny is it that he ends up with a goal at the end of the game? Not obviously the fanciest of goals, of course, but to end up with a goal at the end of the game, a wild, wild ending to this one. And I thought we were on our way to seeing both road teams go 2-0. That's where I thought this series was about to go as we head back to Tampa Bay, and Florida strips that from the Lightning by taking a stranglehold of this series 3-1. So Tampa certainly has their work cut out for them.
Definitely. I didn't think that we were going to actually see the home team win a game in this series, and then we did finally tonight. And like you said, that Ekblad hit certainly a center of conversation, topic of conversation. We're already getting questions from the viewers here about it. We are going to talk about that in a moment. Overall, though, this game and this series, it's the saying goes, and it's true that the more times you face a team, the more you really start to not like each other. And that's been the story of the playoffs, especially for these two teams. And you can see that it gets really heated. It gets very physical. There's a lot of battles and a lot of shenanigans, shall we say. So I think the total hits in this game, Florida had 46 hits, Tampa had 28. So you could definitely see the physical nature of the game. Of course, after the last game, Brandon Hagel missed the last game for Tampa. He was serving that 1-game suspension. So, when he comes back into the lineup, he's going to have somewhat of a target on his back. But he took that hit up high from Aaron Ekblad. I mean, I want to get your thoughts on it, Andrew, because to me, that looked like a very clear leading with the forearm, right, aiming for the head. So bad enough that the hit even happened, but then the fact that there wasn't even a penalty called on the play. Hagel ends up leaving the game, did not return, and that was in the second period. what are first of all, what are your immediate reaction to the hit? Do you think it should have at least been a penalty, if not more?
That's a penalty. That's a 5-minute major. I think that is somewhat of a play that just cannot happen, has to be removed from the game. And the biggest excuse that I see from people, and usually, of course, it's fans of the team trying to defend the player that committed such act, are, well, this player's taller. It's because they're bigger, they're taller. Well, that's not the person's fault that got hit, that they're shorter. That Ekblad has to make himself shorter, or at least that contact point has to be. I mean, it wasn't even a shoulder to shoulder attempt. It was forearm to head, forearm to neck. That's what that was. And that's going to happen sometimes. Is it because it was Hagel, or is it because it was just Ekblad making a play? I think you and I both know, Emma, what the answer is to that question. That extra force was because it was Brandon Hagel. So the question we asked ourselves is that part of playoff hockey? Is that something that we're going to see? And if that is sort of part of playoff hockey and we have to accept that, can we accept the fact that a referee was in 4 feet of the play happening and he decided not to raise his hand? I mean, I watched the replay, I think 10 times, just seeing if the referee would even like move their arm slightly to consider it. And there wasn't even a consideration from the referee. And so Tampa Bay gets 2 quick goals afterwards. As I mentioned off the hop, John Cooper's going crazy on the bench. But if they get those 2 goals, it's great. And, I don't think it takes anything away from the fact that Ekblad potentially could have had to leave the game because of that hit or serve a penalty. And right now, it seems like we're at a point in the game where a little bit tripping, ticking tack calls are going to be made, or interference calls, more than headshots. I think that those are the calls. I mean, hey, if you trip somebody and your stick gets caught up somewhere, that's a trip. But if your forearm goes into someone's head, the referee needs some time to consider it. So, yes, I think it's got to be a call. And I think it's going to be tough for the player department of safety, because if the referee is not making a call, then the Department of Player Safety is going to say, well, somebody that we employ, the NHL, was 5 feet away from the play, had a clear as day view of it. Not only was it not a 2-minute major, not a 5-minute major, it was nothing. And when you watch the NFL, especially these primetime games, I always get a kick out of when they have the referee that they go to on the commentary crew, because they always side with the refereeing crew on the field. Same thing in NBA, same thing in NHL. We're going to bring in our referee specialist. And then, of course, they just agree with what the call is on the ice, field, or court. So do you think that the fact there was no call on the ice will make it tougher for the Department of Player Safety to step in and maybe hand a 1-game suspension to a player like Ekblad?
I don't think it should, but I think it will, for all the reasons that you just mentioned. And, you bring up a good point about, is this part of playoff hockey? Because we all know, that it's the playoffs, it means more, you get physical and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's that to me, that wasn't a hockey play. That wasn't just oh, occupational hazard, it happens. This is the playoffs. I mean, I think that you got to wonder too for Ekblad in particular, this was only his second game back because he had been serving that suspension, not for player safety reasons, but still, he came back. His first game in game 3 was not good. I think he finished -4, and obviously the Panthers lost that game, and so you gotta wonder, is, like, maybe part of that is him, like, really trying to prove something, or just, I don't know, trying to make his presence known, because he certainly did. And like you said, Tampa went and got the 2 quick goals right after that. You're starting to feel pretty good about their chances in this game, and then we get to the 3rd period with Nico Mikkola. Now, he is given a game misconduct, so he's kicked out of the game for boarding on Girgensons. Now, that one, clear as day to me. I don't know how you feel, but I mean, Girgensons clearly in a vulnerable position, was down on his knees, was had his back to the play, and he just Mikula completely just went into him, boarded him like right in the head. Fortunately, he was able to stay in the game, but that was called a misconduct. And now I'm not saying that it shouldn't have been. I'm saying that Ekblad's should have. It's just like it seems like it's like, well, if you're gonna call that, then why don't you call the other hit? And it just seemed like there was so much inconsistency. And it's not even like the Mikola call was a quote unquote makeup call either, because that was very clearly a penalty. So it's like, okay, so you're just calling some of these, but not all of them. Definitely, it just seemed like very, very inconsistent. That's kind of been the story, I feel like, not just of this game or this series, but honestly, the whole playoffs. I feel like the officiating's been kind of inconsistent.
I think it takes a lot for hockey fans to kind of get personal with a play and say, "Whoa, what was that? I can't believe what I just saw." I mean, hockey fans are intense, and a lot of times you'll see, "Wow, what a hit by Wilson! What a hit by Ekblad! What a hit by so on and so forth." But sometimes you see a hit and you think to yourself, "That might have been a bit dangerous, actually." And again, it's very rare you hear hockey fans say that. Usually they're on the other end of like, "Wow, he crushed that guy," and it's the excitement level. I think that the one with Mikola, it was such a vulnerable position with the fact that you have a player that is so low to the boards that it's not even like they can really protect themselves, that has to be called. So of course Ekblad one is really bad as well. But when I look at the Mikola one, it was one that there is absolutely no argument to be made. The referees saw that one, and that was a player that cannot protect themselves. They were in a very vulnerable spot, and we're very lucky right now there isn't a serious injury because of that. Because if he was facing even a little bit more to a different direction and going right into the boards, that could have been very dangerous. But you did bring up, Emma, that did lead to a power play. And of course, with the high stick from Braden Point, that did get cut almost in half, I believe. But I think there is a story behind this, and the story of the special teams for the Tampa Bay Lightning, because a lot of people call some of these guys power play merchants. Nikita Kucherov has been called that at some points in his career. Obviously, he's an unbelievable 5-on-5 player, but some of these players, the power play has been so good for so many years for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And if I told you before this game that there was a questionable hit early on from one player on Florida that didn't get called, and then later in the game there was a pretty bad hit that did get called, and there were a lot of penalties here and there and this and that, usually you'd think, okay, well, that team must have at least got one power play. They should have capitalized. They didn't. The two goals they scored were, what was it, within 10, 20 seconds, it seemed like. So that is not acceptable. They're going to talk a lot about the refereeing. They're going to talk a lot about the hits. When it ultimately comes down to it and we get back to talking about hockey, it's just the execution has not been there for the Lightning this series.
Definitely hasn't. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live, brought to you by Sticks.com. Emma Lingen, Andrew McInnes here. We are talking about game 4 between the Lightning and the Panthers. Panthers take that one 4-2. They have a 3-1 series lead now, and the series heads back to Tampa. So we're talking about that one now. We've also got currently the Dallas Stars and Colorado Avalanche. Dallas just went on the power play. They are still up 1-0. 10 minutes to go in the first period, so we'll be sure to keep you updated on that. Again, we welcome all of your questions, comments, rants, hopes, dreams, anything, any feelings that you have. We would love to process those here with you today as we work through this Lightning Panthers game. It's certainly one that has sparked a lot of emotion from a lot of hockey fans, and understandably so. Andrew, you mentioned the special teams, and I want to talk about that a little more because I think so. Tampa actually got the first power play opportunity of the game in the first period. Forsling was called for slashing on Kucherov. So it was, Tampa got the early power play opportunity, and you're thinking, okay, well, this is a nice little gift here. They didn't record a single shot on goal on that power play. Now, to be fair, there's plenty of blame to go around. It's actually not even just Tampa that has been slacking on the power play, though, granted, they are the ones that are sort of more known for that than Florida is, but I mean, I think the teams combined had a stretch. They're on a stretch here that I wanna say they're, like, 0 for 22 or 0 for 23 on the power play combined. I mean, that's not acceptable for either team. Like, I don't I just think that especially in a game or in a series in the playoffs when you know it's gonna be physical, you know that you're gonna get those advantages and those extra calls, it just seems like the power play's gotta show up, and so, on that note, you think, well, neither power play is showing up, so maybe that means that this series is gonna be decided by 5-on-5 play. But then the game is so tight at 5-on-5 that there's just no wiggle room there, so you're like, "Okay, well, it has to be special teams that decides this series." And to your point, I don't know that I would have looked at these 2 teams, and if you told me the series was gonna be decided by special teams, I don't think I would have picked Florida in that battle. I think it would have been Tampa. And so, just looking at this, kind of shaping up to be the way that it is now, do you think that first of all, do you agree that the series is gonna be won or lost on special teams? And if so, or if not, I mean, who do you think wins that battle? Is it going to be Florida?
At this point, it's going to take a lot for Tampa Bay to break out of whatever is going on with this team. And a lot is said about Vasilevsky because of the past that he has, how successful of a goaltender he can be and has been in his career, the Vasilevsky versus Bobrovsky conversation. But how could anybody talk about Vasilevsky when the lack of execution on the power play is there, Emma? I mean, we can't really talk about the goaltending if the execution is not there in the power play. And it kind of leads me back to the hits that we opened up talking about and the dirty plays, because I'll tell you what, if I'm a player on Florida right now and I'm seeing our PK or I'm seeing their power play and I'm like, wow, we could do anything we want. We're barely getting called for headshots, tripping, hooking, whatever it's going to be. We're going to kill that off. And so if you're, let's be honest, I think you and I would both agree Florida is, I don't want to say, I want to say this correctly here. They're being a little bit more of the aggressive team. Okay. I'm not going to say that they're crossing any lines because, both teams have had some dirty hits so far this series. But if you asked me if we kind of counted it up at the end of this series, who kind of was playing along the line more, I think we'd both probably say Florida. So if there's no power play goals being scored for Tampa, if there aren't even that many calls being made in general, I think it certainly benefits a team like Florida. And when I think about the years of success of Tampa Bay, I do think about, the fourth liners, the third liners. Of course, they got Yanni Gord back now, playing a little bit of a different role than he used to. I think about even the success of Nick Paul, who hasn't really had a great playoff so far. It seems to me that depth has been a huge factor for the Panthers. Defensive production has been a factor for them, getting shots from the point. And if they're going to play kind of those score dirty goals, score from the kind of like the dirty areas, win a typical playoff game, then that's Florida's game all day long. So it's very, very interesting as we move back. The only bright side here is that Tampa Bay didn't win either game at home. They're typically a great home team. They get the last change. They should benefit from that, but they have to be feeling very deflated right now.
Yeah, I would agree. We have the question here. Obviously, both of these teams have, championship pedigree in recent years too. And looking at this as I think we talked about this earlier. Like we would have thought maybe it was a closer series, maybe, tighter, more competitive than it was. Tampa was very close to falling down 0-3 in this series. And then of course it just seems like you said, they need to figure out what's going on here because they avoided going in that 0-3 hole, but it was after they only got 2 goals past Bobrovsky in game 1. They got shut out in game 2. And then you come out game 3 and you score 5 goals. You would think at that point you're playing from behind in the series, if you're Tampa, that needs to be the kind of win I think that gives you a boost, a confidence boost heading into game 4 that's like, "Oh, this is we can do this. We're capable of this." And so, again, it just seems like they Tampa looks a little bit lost. And like you said, it seems, to answer the question, who's gonna win this battle, it feels like it's gonna be, it's not over till it's over, but, just looking at not only the series record, but just looking at the play of both of these teams throughout the series and the consistency or lack thereof, like, I have to give the edge to Florida, and that's not what I would have said. That's not what I did say when, before the series started. We were talking about this earlier. I picked Tampa to win the series, and, it's not looking like a great pick right now.
I'm right there with you. So at least we can be there together because I liked Tampa. I liked how they were built. I felt they were being kind of underestimated by many people. When you look at this Florida team, I thought there might have been a little bit of lack of chemistry. I thought they lost guys in the offseason last year that were great playoff performers, and we're just not seeing that at all. But one thing that was mentioned, I saw it all over social media yesterday, that there actually haven't been that many multi-goal comebacks this playoffs. I think we've up to 3 now, maybe a handful. There haven't been that many. So if you get a 2-goal lead, chances are you should win the game. If Florida gets a 2-goal lead, I really trust them to win that game. And it's, as we saw, it's evident tonight. If Tampa Bay gets a 2-goal lead, well, we don't have to guess anymore. We can't be confident that they're going to win that game because it might slip away on them at this point. So it's very interesting. And that's why they have been Cup favorites up there at the top of the leaderboards for this most of the season. And of course, entering the postseason. And when I think about the style of play, and I see our pal Michael Agello is in the live chat with us, and him and I were talking about referees yesterday. And if we keep seeing this physical hockey that we're seeing and some of these non-calls being made, then I'm ready to say welcome back to the Stanley Cup Finals to the Florida Panthers, because when you talk about depth and physicality, this is going to be something that the Florida Panthers are going to do very well. And I love that comment from Michael there. When did Aaron Ekblad become Bobby Orr? Doing it all, Emma.
Truly. And, it's funny. I wanna talk a little bit about, we're saying, "Oh, well, Florida's gonna win these battles, et cetera," but if we're looking at Tampa and what has gone wrong for them, I mean, I think that this is a team that has really sort of, I think they surpassed expectations in the regular season, because not that anyone thought they were gonna be bad by any stretch, but I think, they had just lost Steven Stamkos. A lot of people were questioning, well, is Jake Gensel really gonna replace Steven Stamkos? And he hasn't, but I think that they've still, to your earlier point, the depth scoring and everything else there, they got Ryan McDonough back, kind of solidify the back end there. And I think that they really kind of reminded everyone, they put the league on notice during the regular season, like, hey, we're not done yet. Like, just because we lost Stamkos, we're not going anywhere. We are still a powerhouse in this league. And a big part of that was Nikita Kucherov, Art Ross winner. He had, I believe, 3 assists in the last game, but he has not scored a goal in 13 playoff games in a row now, dating back to last year. So I kind of feel like as Nikita Kucherov goes, so go the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so I wonder how much, in your opinion, Andrew, how much of this is really is Kucherov to blame? Does a lot of the blame go on him, for not really stepping up in these moments, do you think? Or is it really just more of a whole team thing?
I like to answer questions like that by looking at what other star players on other teams are doing. And when you look at the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Minnesota Wild series, who is supposed to be that guy on the Minnesota Wild? And the answer, of course, is Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov, who is having himself a series. Another young guy playing pretty well for Minnesota. How about Matthew Boldy? He's playing pretty well. And those are supposed to be the best players on their team. And a guy like Martin Necas, who hasn't done very well for the Avalanche, well, it's okay, no problem, because guess what? Nathan McKinnon is the best player on the team, and he is acting as the best player on said team. I keep on talking about how the Oilers are lacking depth again for the most I've seen in 3 or 4 or 5 years. Well, no problem, because McDavid and Draisaitl are going to win you a handful of games and probably take you to game 7 once again. So I always find it difficult in hockey compared to a sport like basketball, where 5 guys are on the court for a majority of the game. Hockey, there's 4 lines, multiple guys out there all the time. But the answer is yes. Your big players have to be your big players. If he is such a sniper, and I also believe that Kucherov is an underrated playmaker. So if you can't score goals, find your teammates. You mentioned the assists, find your teammates and make plays that way. But I think that's something that really has to be talked about. If he's going to have all these accolades and do so well during the regular season, then it's going to be something we have to discuss. But overall, I think it's fair to say this Tampa Bay team is far from out of this series. But it does really, really concern me how gut-wrenching it can be to lose a game like this one when you're up 2-0. That can be very tough for a team like this. And if Florida's going to win games like this again, I look towards some potential opponents for them coming up. And of course, it being Toronto or Ottawa. And then, of course, I hate to say it, probably not Montreal. So the Capitals, the Devils, Hurricane, these teams, can they deal with the mixture of skill and physicality the Florida Panthers bring to the table?
Yeah, it's the age-old question. Again, if you're just joining us now, this is the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live, brought to you by Sticks.com. Emma Lingen, Andrew McInnes here, talking about the Battle of Florida. We talked about this earlier, but got a question here. That Nico Mikkola penalty, the game misconduct in when he boarded Gergensons, obviously kicked out of the game for that. Do you think that he will get supplemental discipline for that from the league? Do you think? I mean, I have to feel like that's something they'll review and they'll look at. But do you think that he'll actually get, whether it's a fine or a suspension?
That seems to be one of those ones where you get like a hearing and then it results in nothing. He got punished with the penalty on the ice, even though I'm kind of contradicting what I said earlier, because sometimes if a penalty is handed out on the ice, then maybe the league will step in and hand something out as well. I do think that the Ekblad one, they're going to say, you know what, referee was close. He made a mistake. We have to suspend him for a game because that's kind of egregious. But the Mikkola one, I think they handled it properly. Look, they said this is not good. It was a vulnerable player. This is a 5-minute major penalty. Like if this would have been 2 minutes, then I think the Department of Player Safety would be like, no, that's something you can't do. We have to step in. It definitely didn't look good. And also, I'm curious your thoughts on this, Emma. I'm really against the whole did the player get hurt aspect, because Mikkola was back on the bench, kind of like shaking it off, moving his neck around a little. He seemed fine, or excuse me, Gergetsen seemed fine, not Mikkola. So that definitely plays a role. So I don't think he will. I think the 5 minutes was appropriate, but I do really think that how a player is. I had a friend that played junior hockey, and he played for an out of town team. I was at the game watching in person here in Halifax, and I just bumped into him in the stands. I'm like, wait, aren't you supposed to be playing for the other team right now? And he goes, oh, I actually hit somebody a few weeks ago and they broke their collarbone. So I got suspended for like 8 games. And I said, oh, was the hit bad? And he goes, it wasn't even that bad of a hit, but the guy broke his collarbone. So they gave me a huge suspension. What are your thoughts on that, just based on the level of injury determining the penalty or suspension?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a common thought that people have. It's like, well, if you're gonna take him out of the game, like if you're gonna injure him so badly that he can't play, then you can't play either. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, okay, I see the thought process there, but at the same time, there are plenty of hits like this one from Mikkola on Girgensons where they were lucky. They were so
Mm,
lucky that Girgensons was not seriously injured on that play.
yes.
And it's like, "Oh, well, because he wasn't injured, then I guess it wasn't that dangerous and, shouldn't be punished." No, that's not how that works. I mean,
The bleeding
it's
one too. That's the weirdest one for
yeah.
me. Like when I was younger, I used to get nosebleeds a lot. I would have drawn so many 4-minute penalties ever, like a small little contact, and I'd be getting nosebleeds. It would have been easy.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, I just think I understand the thought process of, well, like an eye for an eye kind of thing, but going the other direction, it doesn't always work that way because you're not gonna be able to necessarily know when or how bad something is when it happens. Again, the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy live brought to you by Sticks.com. We are talking about Florida and Tampa, doing a wrap up tonight, though, with a little quick tour around the league here. Looking at, I mentioned before, we've got Colorado and Dallas, game five. That series is tied right now. Dallas is up 1-0, about to end the first period here. So we will let you all get back to watching that one. That's been an exciting series. Elsewhere in the West, the St. Louis Blues evened up their series against Winnipeg 2-2. They had another commanding win, 5-2 in game four. Connor Hellebuck pulled from his second straight start. He's allowed 11 goals combined in his last two starts. He's got an 817 save percentage in this series. Now, this is a guy who is all but guaranteed to win the Vezina trophy this year for his performance in the regular season. He has a very good chance of winning the Hart Trophy for his performance in the regular season. Now, you have to wonder, is he going to be what costs Winnipeg in this series against the Blues?
I said to Michael yesterday that I'm beginning to think that Connor Hellebuyck is just not having a good sleep when he goes on the road in these hotels. I hope they're not staying in different hotels than they are during the regular season, because whatever it is, whatever they're doing in the playoffs when they go on the road versus whatever they do during the regular season seems to be a bit different. His numbers overall in the playoffs, but specifically when he leaves the Winnipeg whiteout, it's different. He performs at a different level. Luckily for them, they do have home ice advantage. I think that will be a huge factor. Kudos, hats off, all the claps. I respect St. Louis for what they were able to do. I'm not one of those people panicking right now about Winnipeg. I trust their home ice advantage. I really think this team is deep down the middle, despite the injuries they've had. I think they might start getting guys back here soon. I think Hellebuck will have a bounce back game. It's funny because sometimes goaltenders actually feel less pressure when they're on the road. They can steal a game for a team on the road when they're getting peppered with shots and the other team gets the last change. Seems to me Hellebuck wants to be at home. His team is a good defensive team that plays better at home. I do think the Winnipeg Jets respond, but it's certainly a worry for them moving forward. And all the confidence right now, holding by the St. Louis Blues. They're in control as the confidence and momentum trains. So I think that's why home ice is so important. I know people have said over the years, Emma, that it's kind of stopped mattering, but I think for a series like this, it really does matter. And looking at the Dallas Colorado series, what do we think about home ice in that one?
Well, funny you should mention that because while we were talking here, Dallas just scored again, so they are now up 2-0 on the Avalanche. They're in the first intermission now. Thomas Harley with the goal. So they scored in the first minute of the period and the last minute of the period. Wyatt Johnston with the assist on Harley's goal, so he's now got 2 points tonight. This series, I just, going into this, I thought, man, this Dallas Colorado series, I hate the playoff format. It's not
Mhm.
fair that one of these teams won't make it past the first round. And, but I mean, they have to. It's survival of the fittest here. And then you're thinking, well, if it's survival of the fittest, well, Dallas is going to lose that battle because they don't have Miro Heiskanen, they don't have Jason Robertson. Their defense, especially, they are really missing Heiskanen on defense. Their defense is not very deep, and it shows. But they're finding ways. They got Tyler Sagan back. Um, Again, I really don't have a strong feeling. I mean, I cover the Nashville Predators. I have seen both of these teams quite a bit. I don't really have a strong leaning either way of like, oh, I think this team's gonna win it. Like there's so I mean, both of these teams do different things extremely well. And I think that this is going to end up being a series that goes the distance. Do want to also mention you were talking about goaltending when we were talking about Winnipeg. Last thing I want to bring up here is yesterday in the Hurricanes Devils game. So the Carolina Hurricanes did manage to take a 3-1 series lead over New Jersey. They got the 5-2 win. However, they did so without their goalie in net for the end of the game. So Freddie Anderson collided with Timo Meyer pretty hard in the crease. He had to leave the game. Didn't look great. Peter Kochetkov came in, finished the game in net for Carolina. Looking at this, we don't know for sure yet, but kind of under the assumption that maybe this could be something that keeps Anderson out long term. If that is the case, how does it or does it impact, maybe your opinion of how Carolina does in the playoffs? Maybe they can probably still get past New Jersey, but beyond that, how does it change your outlook on Carolina for the rest of the way here?
I don't usually say I let the stats speak for me, but the numbers we're seeing before our lovely faces right there. 7 career playoff games, 1 win, 870 save percentage, right below us. I mean, those numbers speak to me. Those numbers, and Michael Agello had a great point yesterday when him and I were talking, where he said, "Look at how many games Kochetkov played this season. Look at how many Anderson played. Who was the starter in the playoffs?" I mean, it seems to me, Emma, that we could have had Kochetkov play 80 regular season games, Anderson play 2, and we know who the starter was going to be in the playoffs. It doesn't matter if Kochetkov was going to play half or all the regular season games. Anderson was the starter, and it's really a shame to see him get hurt again. It seems like it's not a playoffs without this guy getting injured. But again, we have to remind ourselves they're going back home and they have home ice. They have been a good team. One thing that's been different about Carolina this year, I will add, and same thing for Winnipeg, because I think those are two kind of teams I put together, is they've been able to win higher scoring games. I think about the Carolina of old, where they were just winning 2-1 games in the playoffs, and that was it. If they didn't win 2-1, they weren't winning. Same thing sort of for the LA Kings. The LA Kings were a win a 2-1 game in the playoffs, or if you're playing first to 4, we're not playing in that game. Carolina has improved their scoring. They lose Natchez, they lose Rantanen. That's tough for them, but I do think their scoring could help them. But evidently, the team doesn't have faith in Kochetkov. I think his rebound control is a bit weak, so it's going to be a bit tougher for them. And I think it's certainly reflected in people's opinions on who's going to win. And now you look at Washington Capitals, they're 10-1 right now to win the Stanley Cup. And this is coming from a Canadiens fan. I think all the value in the East right now is actually on the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, I was gonna, I didn't want to rub it in for you, Andrew, but I was gonna say, maybe Carolina gets past New Jersey now. I don't know that they make it past Washington with Kochetkov in net. I just don't know if it happens. But of course, it's the playoffs, and it's that time of year where crazy things do happen. So you never know, and that's why we are here to break it all down, process it all together. That's going to do it for tonight, though. We are going to let you all get back to watching Dallas, Colorado, second period puck drop coming up here in a few minutes. Once again, this was the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live, brought to you by Sticks.com. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen to us and to who dropped their comments and questions. We love hearing from you guys while we're breaking down these games. Once again, we are here every single night during the playoffs live, which means we will be back here tomorrow night talking about the Senators and the Leafs, whatever may happen there. So you don't want to miss that at all. Once again, I am Emma Lingen. He's Andrew McInnes. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.